Greetings. I'm Craig DeRoche, the president and CEO of Family Policy Alliance. Folks, the battle for our families continues. We know that. Just pick up a newspaper, scroll through any TV show right now, and you'll see the evil one still is targeting our families in public policy and budgets and with elected officials. But the good news in 2025 is things have changed, folks. Elections have consequences, and boy, there's some remarkable things going on that we wanted to talk about. In one of the areas we've seen a lot of good coming from our president and from our Congress for a change. But in Wyoming, they're going further, faster. In fact, they've already had two bills that have been signed, Governor Mark Gordon there, and they're worth talking about, folks. Wyoming is protecting the privacy of kids, boys, keeping them out of girls' sports. And this is one that's emerging. Wyoming took action, passed through the legislature, and got to the governor already to protect our youth from pornography, from online pornography, something that probably should have been done as soon as people started logging into the internet 30 years ago. Said, we need to get the porn off of this for our kids. We're getting around to it now, 30 years later, after generations have been so powerfully negatively affected by it. Here to talk to me about all this is Mr. Nathan Winters, the president and CEO of Wyoming Family Action and Wyoming Family Alliance Foundation. He's been in the state legislature there in Wyoming. He's the founder of this organization. He's grown it into just a wonderful organization that is able to pass consequential bills, as I just described. Nathan, thank you for being with us today.
It's so good to see you, Craig, and I'm so thankful for all the work you've done. What we're doing here is really a continuation of the work I know that's being done across the country, and you do so much for so many people like those of us here at Wyoming Family Alliance. So I just want to say thank you in return.
Yeah, well, it's easy for me to do because we exist for the work of places like Wyoming Family Alliance. So tell everybody, and Wyoming Family Alliance Foundation, tell everybody that's joining and hasn't heard about Wyoming Family Alliance for the first time, what is a state policy council? What does your shop do on a daily basis?
Wyoming Family Alliance, when we first started up, I had just stepped out of the Wyoming legislature, and I had an opportunity to really see where major issues were coming up in our state. And often here in Wyoming, we're the least populated state in the union, and yet the 10th largest in land mass. And so that means there's a lot of rural areas that are often separated from one another. And people think of this as flyover country. But decisions made here impact people all across the United States of America. And so what you could see is that there was a desperate need for an organization that would help build out the principles necessary to protect life, to defend family values, to protect religious freedom. And oftentimes with parental rights and education freedom as well, it was necessary for an organization like this. And God has really blessed it because this has just taken off like gangbusters. We had just watched Colorado to our south slide over the previous number of years from being a fairly conservative state to a state that was pushing the boundaries of the far left. And it was a concerted effort by a group of people. And I thought, we just cannot allow that to happen here in Wyoming. And so God allowed this organization to be born out of that desire. And we're doing a wonderful job just because the Lord is guiding every step we take.
Well, I'll tell you what, and that's evident to some of us that watch it from a national perspective. Wyoming Family Alliance and Wyoming Family Alliance Foundation, we're talking with the president, CEO, Mr. Nathan Winters, and they are growing fast, and they are serving the body of Christ and those that do not know yet Christ in Wyoming, both with open hands, and they are really kind of introducing America to some of the policies that are changing things for the better. As I pointed out in the intro, my kids, the entire time I raised them, when we had kids, iPhones didn't exist, and they existed the whole time I'm raising them. I have two adult kids now, one going off to college next year, Nathan. Wow. Online pornography is a big deal. And for some reason, our generation, so I'm not yelling at other people, I yell at myself. I should have done a better job. You passed House Bill 43 in Wyoming. So what? Nobody knows what House Bill 43 is. It's a big deal. Folks, I bet your state right now isn't protecting your kids from pornography. I bet your state is allowing your kids to look at whatever they want. 8 years old, 11 years old, doesn't matter. Wyoming now protects your kids, as do many of the FPC states. Tell us what this unique approach, this House Bill 43 to protect kids from pornography that you passed, Nathan.
Well, I'll tell you the origin of the bill and then how it was worked through the process. First of all, last year, the Family Policy Alliance hosts what's called a Statesman Academy. It's just phenomenal. Every year, excellent legislators meet from around the country. And this last year, Wyoming Family Alliance had the privilege of sponsoring Representative Martha Lawley to attend that Statesman Academy. And there she began to get a vision for what could happen if we were to protect children. Now, a conservative is really careful and cares deeply about protecting the First Amendment and making sure that no one can encroach on that, and yet at the same time protecting children, minors, from material that is harmful to them is very important. And like you just said a few minutes ago, the world has shifted underneath our feet over the last 25 years or so. And so this was very carefully crafted legislation that was first begun there at the Family Policy Alliance, and where Martha picked that up. And she is just a phenomenal legislator, a brilliant lawyer. She's gone through her entire career and has worked on a number of major things. And so she picked this bill up and really brought it home. There was a lot of steps, a lot of things. We flew individuals in to speak on it. We even had Joseph Combe, a lawyer with Family Policy Alliance, join us by Zoom in those committee meetings. And every step of the way, you could just see God working to protect these minors. And it was very interesting. Those who were trying to fight against the bill had very little they could say against it because it's so common sense, which I was very thankful for. So House Bill 43 went all the way through the process and the governor signed it.
This is amazing to me because Dan Quayle in the 80s, Nathan, said that we should be protecting our kids from pornography. And everybody said, you old fuddy-duddy. I think he was a 40-year-old at the time. You old fuddy-duddy. This doesn't mean anything. It's not harmful to kids. Come on. We all looked at Playboys when we were teenagers in the 50s, and they laughed him off stage. And now, Nathan, we see this thread of children looking at pornography is actually very well documented. That is a root cause of everything, right? And I'm in recovery for addiction, Nathan. So I'm going to say some of the things that I can say. A lot of kids, they don't start with drugs and alcohol. They start with something with pornography. They make a poor choice and they destroy whatever world they think they're living in with their friends and their peers. And they start drinking or taking alcohol or doing whatever. What I mean by this is it's foundational, Nathan. It's platform for alcoholism, for suicide, for, taking benzos, for all the fighting at school, gambling, you name it, sexual behavior. And here we are 40 years after we made fun of a guy, Dan Quayle, for doing this, and it's passing in Wyoming. How did you pass this out? Was this partisan, I assume, Nathan? Was this fire-breathing Republicans only? In Democrats, or is it turning out that Democratic parents want to protect their kids too?
Well, all people want to protect their kids, and that's what we've watched. Now, I have to explain in Wyoming, in the Wyoming legislature right now, 56 out of 62 members of the Wyoming House of Representatives are Republican, and in the Senate, it is 29 to 2. And so even those who are kind of leaning leftwards, who in other states might be Democrat, are probably still in the Republican Party here. But it was broadly supported within the Republican Party. There were a couple in the Senate, specifically Republicans, who voted against it. And that wasn't unexpected, sadly, from those individuals. But by and large, it was broadly supported. And so we are very much a red state, and we have to keep that in mind. But with that being said, it was a broad spectrum who recognized the damage done, and just kind of laying on top of what you just explained, regarding how not only prevalent pornography is, but also the damage that it has in so many other levels. Um, when you look at how a human being winds up looking at another human being as an object rather than someone made in the image of God, that's one of the major reasons I think that this is so damaging, especially to children. It teaches them that essentially relationships and God's gift of sex, that it's all transactional. And so this truly is an impactful kind of legislation because it will help in so many areas that we can't even fully see right now because of how tied in it is to every aspect of being human.
Yeah, and it that's probably why the devil landed here, isn't it? On trying to corrupt us through these things. But you guys have taken a real powerful one-two punch, if you will, approach in that you're going to protect our youth from being exposed to this in the internet and things like that. But you were also going to take a more proactive approach to where some of the chicanery and the nonsense from the internet and from some of these movements like the boys and the girls sports in the locker room and other school sports, but also other thing facilities at the schools. You guys, you guys were able to address that this year too in Wyoming, and you haven't been able to address that for several years. What changed, Nathan?
Well, it's sort of like the last legislation we just spoke of, and one that personally I introduced a decade ago, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. We saw that passed this year. I think what people have to realize about politics is that you rarely get everything you want all in one fell swoop. It takes being a faithful gardener, constantly hoeing and weeding and watering and nourishing and working for that day. So one of the things that we really were looking at this year is trying to build off of a past win that didn't go quite nearly far enough to protect girls and women's sports. This year, it was actually that same representative, Martha Lowley, who picked up this legislation and worked with a senator who had worked on this in the past and came up with a wonderful piece of legislation that protected girls, especially in collegiate sports. And it's important, even though there was a presidential directive on this at the beginning of the year, it's still important for each state to put legislation like this in place. And it really came to the forefront in the state of Wyoming when we had a girls' volleyball team at the University of Wyoming who was playing a college from California that had a male player on it. We already know the dangers. This male player was able to spike the ball at speeds that were pretty much unknown to the average female player. It was quite a discrepancy there. In several schools, not just the University of Wyoming, chose not to play that school because they understood that it was inappropriate to do that. Well, we had the privilege of talking to some of those young ladies playing in that sport. And they said, we actually were told that it was our decision to make. But in reality, it was such there was so much pressure from student groups and everything else. It was not right to put those girls through that. And they were literally asking for the legislature to make a decision to do what was right. And so we did. And it was overwhelming. I think most people in the United States understand the necessity of protecting our girls in sports. And it was highly successful in the state of Wyoming this year. Great legislation.
Well, it's an amazing story, and folks, it's a reminder. We're talking about Wyoming, and Nathan. We're with Nathan Winters, the president and CEO, the founder of Wyoming Family Alliance and Wyoming Family Alliance Foundation, and he's talking about the difficulty when he recounts that their Senate is 26-6, that their House was at 59-2. You said, something. Oh, 50. I'm sorry. 56 to, yeah, whatever it was, is stunning number of Republicans. But here they are several years into this debate, just able to pass this with overwhelming support now, folks. And it seems like a layup. I'll use a basketball analogy. It's March that we're talking right now to protect women's civil rights, to give them that layup. But it hasn't been a layup, Nathan. It hasn't been a layup. You had to create a whole, or you were in the legislature and you tried to protect girls 10 years ago. And here you've been fighting, built a whole organization to do it. Folks, there's a reason why I'm saying this. You did this. When you read the newspaper, they'll tell you that President Bush did this or President Obama or Trump or somebody. That's not actually true. It's not the way our country works. Who made these changes are you. Nathan wanted to be able to make the changes when he was in the legislature. He wasn't empowered to do it. He wanted to make them when he was creating a family policy council. It wasn't ready yet. The time wasn't ripe yet. He wanted to do it when more than half of the country had done it. He wanted to do it in Wyoming before our president spent $250 million pointing out this crazy denial of civil rights of our women and girls from their sports. And 80% of the public agreed with him. But until that point, our politicians were cowering in fear in Wyoming and everywhere else. They were shirking their responsibilities from taking the tough votes to protect families and to protect life, folks. But something changed. And what changed was a family policy council was created in Wyoming, just like we're trying to create them now in Colorado and Illinois and Nevada. And we dug in. We trained legislators on how to legislate. We engaged the churches through the Church Ambassador Network, through Christians Engaged, through other things. And folks, you showed up. The folks that are listening to the show, it's a celebration of you. So, Nathan, I think they know that. They hear that from you and I enough. But, you and I really wanted to come on and let them know that that's what they're doing, that they did this in Wyoming. If you don't live in Wyoming, metaphorically, I want you to understand you did. If you're in one of the 26 other states that went first or 20 on child pornography, you did. You helped be the hands and feet for Nathan and his crew there, just as he's helping you become the hands and feet where you are. Who knows, even California, Kansas, Missouri, some of these states, Nathan. I just wanted to comment on who we are and how we do this. Did I get it right? That's why you're on here now. You're celebrating. We're not upset that it took us 10 years. We're saying, woohoo. What a great way to spend the last 10 years and look at what we were able to do for kids, right, Nathan?
Absolutely. It just takes faithfulness. The other thing, too, is I'm so thankful for the family policy councils that have come up through the last several decades. People are seeing the real value of it because often politics, I know it's March, but I still will use a football analogy. Often people will think that it's just a series of games and we're supporting this one major race. And then after the election, everybody just goes home and then gets ready for the next season. But a family policy council doesn't see it that way. We don't think 2 to 4 years ahead. We're thinking 20 to 40 years ahead. And we're trying to build a deep bench, a team that understands that these are decisions that matter for eternity. And so we're working generationally. And so at Wyoming Family Alliance, and I know at Family Policy Alliance, that really is our motivation. When we look at what eternal truth looks like and how it's supposed to interact with a civil society, we're looking at this from a very, very broad perspective, and we care deeply. So we're always here on the ground, always working steadily. I know, like you, both of us have many speaking engagements, educational issues going on throughout the year. And so it takes the kind of support that will allow an organization like this to go on throughout a year so that we can carry on our decades-long approach to making sure that our individual states are protected.
Well, it's amazing, the success and our approach. And it's just a gift that God has chosen us to work in this movement. And it's a privilege, folks, that folks like you contribute. And when we say contribute, it's not just your treasure. I know you think that maybe Nathan and I are always just like when you go into church, and he's talking about contributions. He's talking about the plates coming around again. No, we're talking about a movement of parents. We're talking about a movement of Christians, not Christians that want to say we're better than other people. Christians are saying, thank God I needed to know Christ or I wouldn't have gotten through the day as a human being. But I get to share this gift of Jesus with you, and that's a completely different approach. And we're trying to make other people's lives better, and we're winning. We're having success. We want to encourage you to join us. The last 10 years have been tough, folks. You'll hear on this show, we'll talk about when we were firebound or when we got debanked or the other stuff. But folks, 80% of the folks agree with us out there on these issues. Nobody wants to expose and sexualize kids with pornography other than the bad guys. And you can get involved with your family policy council simply by clicking on the links below. And if you live in Wyoming, you're probably already a member because it's one of our fastest growing state organizations. But if you're not a member yet, join Wyoming Family Alliance. It's easy to do and it's free. And if you live in another state, click on the link to go there. Folks, we mobilized over 850,000 Christians. We reached through 33 million emails, 12 million of them focused in the swing states, Nathan. We had a powerful impact on this last election. We're just getting started. Folks, the reason why people are leaving tribes and realigning is not on fiscal issues, not on these made up political things. It's on social conservative issues, the types of issues that Wyoming Family Alliance just passed. They had signed into law. If you want to see more of that, we need your help, though. So please join us and join Wyoming Family. Nathan, give us a word of encouragement as we head out from here.
I remark about this quite often that when the righteous rule, the people rejoice. And there is a sense of rejoicing this year in Wyoming. We've waited for a moment like this. I can tell you that in my 13 years, either in the legislature or working closely with it, this is the very best year we've ever had. It wasn't just these two pieces of legislation. It was things like education savings accounts, parental rights, a lot of major issues where we had a wonderful advancement this year. But it took a long time to get here, but it's the very best one. And I as a result, I see a lot of rejoicing all across Wyoming, and then people who have been connected with us. And so I'm so thankful to watch that biblical principle come true right here in Wyoming. So we're always encouraging people to visit us at wyomingfamily.org. You can always see what's going on. People can click either to subscribe, but also they can go to a button there and they can get uploads of what our latest issues and process things are. We are right now working on a series that'll come out talking about the foundation of conservatism from Russell Kirk. And so we'll be looking at that, the conservative mind. And people say, well, that sounds partisan. It's not at all. The very first point that Mr. Kirk came up with all those years ago is that a conservative believes in eternal truth, and he operates on that belief. And so what we're trying to do is continue to educate all of those around us so that we can work together for the good of our society. And so that'll be ongoing all throughout the year. There's a lot going on, even though the legislative session here in Wyoming is now over. So we're just asking people to join with us.
Well, folks, Nathan, from your lips to God's ears, we want you to join us. We want you to consider joining us. If you're frustrated or even if you're just happy with what's going on, you want to see more of it. We are winning, but there's a lot of work to do. 50, 60 years of chicanery and nonsense foisted upon our families, our children, and attacks on our life itself and our religious liberty. We're undoing that. We need your help. Please join us. It's been a privilege to be with you. And until we see you again, may God bless you in all you do.